So of course it's hat day and sock day. So of course got on my cool hat, got on my cool socks. Check them out, Super Mario Brothers. I hope each of you wore your hat and your socks to school today. If you did, later on today, the substitute will give you a piece of candy if you've paid. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I miss each and every one of you. Hopefully I got to see you this morning though. But if not, have a good day and I will be back on Wednesday. Hi boys and girls. You didn't think you could get rid of me that easy, did you? Well, I've recorded my lesson a day beforehand so that you all are receiving instruction from me on the different types of water that is present on our earth. So let's just jump right into it. Your teacher has passed out a paper that looks like this. So when you find this paper on your desk, I want you to take it and fold it in half to make a booklet. And then when we finish the booklet, you'll of course put your glue dots on the back like usual, and we're going to glue this into our journal. But first, let's look at the blue paper that the substitute gave you because we're going to talk about that one first. All right, so this blue paper, I want you to do the same thing. You have your blue paper here. I want you to take it and fold it in half. And now, this paper has already been filled in for you. It's about the water cycle. We've been talking about the water cycle now for 2 weeks. So we all have had plenty of time to learn and understand everything that we need to know about the water cycle. But this is kind of all of the information that we've talked about over the past 2 weeks in one convenient location. So this will be really good for us at the end of the school year when we're going back and reviewing and getting ready for that EOG so that you can show everything that you know. So I want you guys just to take a second, pause here, and look over this booklet as you're gluing it in to your journal and see if there's anything on it that catches your eye. So if you could pause here just for a moment and give everybody an opportunity to glue this into their journal and talk about it just a little bit. All right, so now that you all have had a chance to glue the water cycle booklet into your notebooks, I'm hoping that you all notice that the ocean covers 75% of the Earth's surface because that's very important because that's where all the salt water is stored on Earth. So now we're going to talk about the rest of the water that is on Earth. So everybody should have this brochure, booklet, whatever it's called, and we're going to go through and we're going to fill in the different blanks that are located on here. So it says the 6 categories of water on Earth. The first one looks pretty easy. That is probably your ocean water. So we're going to label that as salt water. So that first blank, put salt water down. Now, the second one here, can't really tell what that one is quite as much, but that one's going to be fresh water. So go ahead and write fresh water in that blank, F-R-E-S-H, water, W-A-T-E-R. Now, the next one looks like mountains, has some snow and ice on top. So of course, that is going to be our ice caps and glaciers. So go ahead and write ice caps and glaciers in that blank. Now, don't stress too much if you're not having enough time to write. After we get done talking about the front page, I'm going to put a filled-in copy right up at the front, and your substitute can pause it there and everybody can make sure that they have their blanks filled in. But right now we're just kind of talking about it, so don't get too distracted on writing just yet. Now, the fourth picture there looks like the ground with a puddle of water going underneath there. That is our groundwater. So far we have salt water, fresh water, ice caps and glaciers, and groundwater. And the last two, this one here is a stream leading down to a lake. And remember, our streams and our lakes, those are freshwater sources. So we've got lakes, rivers, and streams there. And then our last blank is water in the soil and air. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys a completed one. And if you've got a few extra minutes, go ahead and color in some of the pictures while you wait on the rest of your classmates to finish writing. If we could get your substitute to pause here. All right, great job, guys. So go ahead and open your booklet up. And we have a bunch of bottles of water here. Now this whole bottle of water here, this is going to represent all of the water on Earth. So what I want you to do is with a blue crayon or colored pencil at your desk, I want you to go ahead and color in that full bottle of water there, because that represents all of the water on Earth. And if you look here, it says the 1,000 milliliters of water represents all of the water on Earth. So fill in that blank with A-L-L, all. Okay, and of course this is just a model, so it's just a limited representation. The next blank is representation, R-E-P-R-E-S-E-N-T-A-T-I-O-N. It's a limited representation of an object that's going to be used to help us understand the structure or how the water or the amount of water works on the Earth. So the second blank is understand. The model is a representation that helps us understand. U-N-D-E-R-S-T-A-N-D. And this is 1,000 milliliters. Okay? So 1 liter. All right. Now, let me grab a marker or a crayon as well. Just a second. And a clipboard. Alright guys, so what I asked you to do was to color in this whole bottle because it represents all of the water on Earth. And it is 1,000 milliliters. Now, I'm going to show you at the end here the blanks that should have been filled in. But for now, just look at my messy coloring to know how much of the bottles you should be coloring. So we've got 1,000 milliliters to represent all of the water on Earth. Out of all of the water on Earth, we learned that, actually, we haven't learned it yet. We'll learn it in the video later, but let's go ahead and get our notes taken. so that you can pay closer attention in the video. So, out of all of the water on Earth, 972 milliliters of water are salt water. So, that comes up to, right above that first line there. And we're going to color all of that in. So, 97% of all the water on Earth is salt water. Now, the fresh water, the amount of fresh water on Earth is only 28 milliliters, so less than 3%. So we have, 28 milliliters. Let's see how many lines are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's going to be right below that first line. Only 28 milliliters of water on Earth is fresh water. Whoops, we didn't make a prediction. That's okay, we'll get it next time. All right, so out of the 28 milliliters of water that is considered fresh water here on Earth, that's split up into 4 different places, which we listed on the front. We've got our fresh water and our salt water, or our salt water and our fresh water. And then on the front of our booklet, we also listed ice caps and glaciers. And ice caps and glaciers, that holds most of our fresh water. Ice caps and glaciers holds 23 out of those 28 milliliters of fresh water on Earth. And our groundwater, it only holds 4 milliliters, a measly 4 milliliters of water. Our lakes and our rivers, that's only about 2 drops of our water. But you'll find out later that those 2 drops is actually quite a bit of water. We'll see it on our map on the video later. And lastly is the water that's in our soil and air. And the water that's in our air is usually water vapor until it starts to cool down up in the atmosphere and it starts to condense and get heavy. So, the water that is in our soil and air is actually only equal to 1 drop. Okay, which is like maybe, less than 1% of the water on the Earth. So now what I want you to do is I would love for the substitute to go ahead and pause the video here and give you all a chance to discuss the first, second, and third question on your booklet. And then we'll come back and we'll answer that last question about the amount of water on Earth. All right, so now that you've had time to discuss those 3 questions, I'm sure some of you are probably really surprised at the amounts that we have listed here. When you think about lakes and rivers, sometimes lakes can be really big, but in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty small. And I hope that you all got that the bottles of water represented the different categories of water that were on Earth. And if you didn't get that, you might want to go back and change it. Remember, that was at the front of our booklet that we started taking notes on. And the last question I told you we would come back and discuss was, does the amount of water in the Earth ever change? Does the amount of water on Earth ever change? Well, we did learn that water is matter, and matter cannot be created or destroyed. So the answer is no. Water cannot be destroyed. It just moves around and changes forms in the water cycle. So your answer for that last question is no. It just moves around. So if you did not get to answer your first 3 questions, go ahead and do that. But now I'm going to show you a completed copy of what your notes should look like. And if the substitute will just pause right here so that you all can make sure you have the correct answers written on your notes, that would be fantastic. All right, so now that we've taken our notes, it's time to watch our video, and then it'll be time for you all to complete a short little lesson in the Google Classroom about the different types of water. And after you finish that, you all will work on your water drop stories or your water drop videos. One last thing, after you watch the video, or right before you watch the video, go ahead and glue that last booklet we just did into your science journals. It should be on page 6. So I need you all to turn to your table of contents, and under the page part, write 6. And the title of the page is going to be Types of Water or Categories of Water. So I'll use this one as an example here. This is a new student, so this student only has the types of water part, but this is what it should look like in your table of contents. Types of water. Go ahead and glue that in your science journals, and then we will watch our video, The Basics of Fresh Water.
Let me take you back in time for a sec, way back to the beginning of this show. Remember that? The very first thing we learned is that animals need the energy from food in order to live. And that's still true. But I have news for you. There's something else that animals, and pretty much everything else, need to live too. No, not YouTube videos of cats, although it's hard to imagine life without them. I'm talking about water. Living things need water. Some living things need fresh water, and some need salt water. But all living things need some form of water to keep on living. I know you know what water is. You've seen it, you've done cannonballs into it, you've filled balloons with it and threw them at people, and you certainly drink it. Water is one of the most common substances on Earth. It covers more than 2/3 of the surface of our planet. We actually have enough water on Earth to leave a faucet running for 136 trillion years. But let's not do that. Because for all the water we have, there's one kind of water that we need to keep us alive, and that's fresh water. So what is fresh water and where do we get it? Well, it's probably easier to start with where it's not. Most of the water on Earth is in the oceans. They're huge, and they're also full of salt. So most of the water on Earth is actually salt water. By contrast, fresh water is found in lakes, rivers, ponds, wetlands, and streams, and it contains very little salt. Less than 0.1% salt, actually. And plants and animals, including us humans, depend on fresh water because we can't survive on salt water. The amount of salt in salt water is much higher than what our bodies can process. In fact, drinking too much salt water could even kill a person, which is just one of the reasons fresh water is so important. So now you know what fresh water is and that it's super necessary to our survival. But if the oceans make up most of the water on Earth, where can you find fresh water? Let's take a look at a map to see if we can find some of its major sources. People who study geography, we call them geographers, use maps all the time. They're interested in Earth's physical features like its mountains, deserts, rivers, and oceans. This map shows all of the Earth's land and water. All of the blue stuff is water. But remember, most of the blue stuff is salt water. In fact, about 97% of the water on the planet is salty. So let's do some math with that. If 97% of the Earth's water is salt water, then only about 3% of the planet's total water supply is fresh water. But about 2% 90% is locked up in frozen glaciers or underground where we can't get to it. So that means of all the water that's on Earth, less than 1% of it is actually accessible to us on the surface, so we can grow crops and have drinking and bathing water for our homes. Now that you know how little fresh water there really is on Earth's surface, it kind of makes sense that most sources of fresh water would be too small to spot on a map this big. But if we zoom in, we can get close enough that we can spot a few. See any freshwater sources here in North America? I'll give you a hint. They're pretty great. I'm talking about the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes hold a lot of fresh water. About 20% of Earth's available fresh water is actually in those 5 lakes. But the Great Lakes are really big examples of where fresh water can be found. Most fresh water is in much smaller lakes, rivers, and streams on every continent. Those are the small blue lines in the inland bodies of water, like these. So what does this map tell us? Well, it tells us that there's a lot of water on Earth, but very little of it is fresh water. And since humans and many other animals need fresh water to survive, they're likely to live in habitats that are near major sources of fresh water, like a river or a lake. Maybe one of the Great Lakes. If they don't live near a source of fresh water, then people have to adapt their environment to bring the water to them. Remember when we talked about Las Vegas? So, fresh water is the substance that keeps you and me and Catbot and Grumpy Cat and just about every other living thing alive. And it's all over the Earth, in extremely limited amounts. So, use it wisely.